Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we are going to unpack a really deeply misunderstood communication habit. It's something that so many of us do, something we constantly judge ourselves for, and honestly, something that gets heavily stigmatized in our fast-paced world. We are talking about over-explaining. And today, we're going to completely shift how you view this habit. We aren't just going to look at what over-explaining sounds like, we're actually going to use the research to look at what it fundamentally is. So let's go on a journey to destigmatize a behavior that, as you'll see, is actually rooted in self-protection. So let me ask you a direct question right off the bat. Why do we use too many words? Seriously, have you ever walked away from a conversation just thinking, why did I just talk for 5 straight minutes to answer a simple yes or no question? Okay, let's dive into this. Usually when we catch ourselves rambling, our immediate reaction is just pure self-criticism. We tell ourselves we need to be better at getting to the point. But what if that excess of words isn't a failure of your communication skills at all? What if your brain is actually executing a highly specific protective strategy? All right, moving into section 1, more than poor brevity. Let's totally shift our perspective here and redefine the core problem. We've got to move away from seeing this as just some conversational annoyance. On the surface, society tells us that over-explaining is just poor brevity, a lack of editing. But the neurological reality, it reveals that it's actually threat management. And wow, that is a massive paradigm shift. Your brain isn't failing to be concise, your brain is actively trying to close every possible misunderstanding before it even has the chance to become a conflict. It's like your brain is scanning the horizon, seeing the potential for a misinterpretation, and just aggressively deploying words to neutralize that threat before it even materializes. It's not a lack of focus, it is hyper-focus on safety. Which brings us to section 2, managing perceived threats. Let's take a softer, more empathetic look at why our brains developed this specific strategy in the first place. Think about it. Misread quickly, blamed quickly, punished quickly. If your past experiences have taught you that people react this way to you, then being concise doesn't just feel difficult, it feels genuinely risky. If keeping it brief in the past led to someone totally misunderstanding your intentions, blaming you for a mistake, or punishing you before you could fully explain yourself, well, your brain took notes. It learned a very harsh lesson. Giving people a small amount of information leaves room for them to fill in the blanks with their own negative assumptions. So of course your brain decided that conciseness is a major danger zone. Let's move to section 3, the quest for control. Now we're going to look at the exact mechanics of how over-explainers try to regain their footing in daily interactions. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what happens in real time when we communicate from a place of threat management. We do it in sequential layers. Step 1, we add context. We set the stage so absolutely no one can misinterpret the environment. Step 2, we add disclaimers. We preemptively apologize or clarify what we definitely don't mean. And step 3, we add justification. We defend our stance before anyone has even challenged it. You are literally stacking words like bricks to build a wall of safety around your core message. This all builds into a central understanding of our human body. Your nervous system desperately wants control over how you will be perceived. I really want to highlight this because it totally removes the shame. When you're stacking those layers of context and justification, it is not an ego trip. It isn't because you just love hearing yourself talk. It is a desperate, biological attempt by your nervous system to control the narrative, to dictate perception, and ultimately to secure your physical and emotional safety in that social dynamic. But here's the catch. Section 4, the tragic irony. We need to slow down here for a second and really let the emotional weight of these unintended consequences land. Because there is a heartbreaking irony to this communication style. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it breaks down that backfire. Your intended goal is just preventing conflict. That is literally all you want to do. But the actual result? You end up creating fatigue or distance. The very strategy you're using to bring someone closer, to make them understand you perfectly, is the exact mechanism pushing them away. The listener just gets totally overwhelmed by the sheer volume of context and disclaimers. They get tired, they pull back, and you are left watching the exact thing you feared most, distance, happening right in front of you. And that leads to this incredibly stark reality. The message gets heavier, and you still don't feel safe. Just sit with that for a second. You expended all that energy. You built the perfect fortress of context. You managed the threat from every conceivable angle. And yet, at the end of the conversation, your heart is still racing. The anxiety is still right there. The strategy didn't just backfire with the other person, it completely failed to give your own body the safety it was working so desperately to achieve.
So, what do we do? Section 5, the real solution.
If the old strategy isn't working, we have to redefine what successful communication actually looks like for the chronic overexplainer. And let me be incredibly clear right now. The solution is not silence. Actually, scratch that. When overexplainers realize their habit is pushing people away, their absolute first instinct is usually to swing the pendulum completely in the opposite direction. They shut down, they become totally mute, they essentially punish themselves with silence. But you know what? That is just another form of threat management. It's hiding. That is not the way forward, and our source material is super explicit about this. So the crucial point is how we actually redefine success in our interactions. First, clarity does not require total explanation. You can absolutely be understood without providing the entire backstory. Second, and honestly way more importantly, safety does not require total explanation. You can be perfectly physically and emotionally safe in a conversation, even if the other person doesn't have every single disclaimer and justification perfectly mapped out. Less is indeed more, but not just for the sake of brevity, for the sake of your own peace. I want to leave you with this final, beautiful, and highly provocative thought straight from the source. Sometimes the brain needs practice tolerating being understood imperfectly. Think about what a massive paradigm shift that is. Your brain needs practice. It's a muscle you have to build. You literally have to actively practice allowing a sentence to just hang there, perfectly imperfect. Can you let someone understand you just 80% and trust that you will still be okay? It is a terrifying thought for the threat managing brain, for sure, but it is the ultimate path to conversational freedom. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly, highly encourage you to take this thought into your very next conversation.